Assalamu alaikum, girls. The poem that we'd be doing today is When I'm Dead, My Dearest by Christina Rossetti. If you're to look at this particular poem, girls, you need to see the fact that it is a form of poetry that is known as a song. A song is a kind of poem that is meant to be sung. It is usually accompanied by a musical instrument. And in the olden times, when songs and poems were to be transferred from one generation to another, it was a very popular form of writing poetry. But then again, even in the modern times, a lot of people use this particular genre of poetry to express their emotions. If we were to come to verse number 1 of the poem, this particular poem is divided into two verses, verse 1 and verse 2, each constituting of 8 lines. Simple diction. However, despite the fact that the language is very, very simple, there is an element of ambiguity that you see running throughout the poem in verse 1 as well as in verse 2. Some unanswered questions, but such is the subject matter of the poem that death in itself is something that is very ambiguous. It leaves a lot of unanswered questions, and that is what you see throughout the flavor of the poem as well. So coming to verse 1, girls, it says, "When I'm dead, my dearest, sing no sad songs for me." So here there is this unnamed narrator who was probably addressing his or her beloved and saying that, once I'm gone, once I'm dead, please don't sing any the usual things that people do for their beloveds. Don't do the usual things for me, like sing sad songs or place roses at my head, or plant a cypress tree. Now, a cypress tree is known for its shade and everything. So a lot of people tend to place that next to the graves of their beloveds. So he's saying, or plant them next to the grave of the beloved. So here the poetess is saying that please don't do any of the usual things that people do. What I want you to do when I'm dead and gone is to plant some sort of green grass above me. Now, green grass here is a very important metaphor, girls. You need to understand. Now, grass is something that requires less care. It is something that once planted sort of lasts for the longest time ever, and it does not require much care. So, and then again, it has this element of moisture and dampness and coolness that accompanies it, which the poetess is talking about over here. And she says that if there is something that you can do, just be the green grass above me, and because that would help me and moisturize me and keep me cool with the showers and dewdrops wet. And in the process of once having planted the grass and having done what you could do for me, if you keep remembering me and come to my grave every now and then, that's very, very good. But just in case you forget, even that is fine with me, because I have the green grass to keep me cool and moisturized with the dewdrops and the showers that it will give me. If you look at the structure of this poem, girls, it is divided in two verses, one verse that we've discussed, and then there is another verse, and each verse is divided into 8 lines, and it can be further broken down into 2 quatrains, that is 4 lines each. And the rhyme scheme that you see in the quatrains, that is the 4 lines that one particular verse is divided into, the 4 quatrains that each verse is divided into. The rhyme scheme that we see is ABCB. That is, the first, second, and third line do not rhyme. However, the second and the fourth line rhyme. So if you're to look at it, it is the second and the fourth line that rhymes, whereas the first and the third line do not rhyme. And of course, there is a clear rhythm and there's a beat to the whole poem, and it is very structured. And if you're to read it aloud, there is a lot of rhythm and rhyme to it, obviously because it is meant with the purpose of singing, as it is a song. If you had to look at the content, of the poem, like we've discussed before. It's about this unnamed narrator that is speaking to another individual who he identifies as my dearest. Of course, my dearest is a very strong word because dearest in itself is a superlative. And then along with that, when somebody says my dearest, it shows and instills a very, very deep emotion. The use of alliteration as an important literary device has been used here. As you are all aware of, we've discussed time and again in the class how alliteration is so, so important. The words such as dead and dearest, that means the repetition of the consonant sound D in dead and dearest helps to intensify the emotion, and then the repetition of the consonant sound S in sing, sad, and songs in the second line, girls, for instance, also gives off a simple, calm atmosphere also to the whole work, and also somewhat of a poetic form to the whole narration of the poem. So the second line, girls, it's not second lie, it is second line. There's a bit of a mistyping here. Now, like I've discussed, what exactly the unnamed speaker wants from beloved, I'll discuss later. As discussed previously, we'd come on to the idea of the repetition in the last two lines of the first verse. And it has been done to emphasize the idea that whether the narrator's companion wishes to remember or forget the speaker, it is all the same, because by only changing one word in those lines, Rossetti creates a sense of calm and creed. And if thou wilt very much embodies this idea that grief is personal, and sometimes people don't really go out to express it like that. So the fact that once the poetess is gone, the narrator is died, even if their beloved does not come to their grave, it is perfectly all right, because grief is something that is so, so personal. And the fact that they've just planted grass over there for the dead to sort of relish once they're there in their graves, it is perfectly all right with the poetess. Coming to verse number 2, what is it that the poetess says? She says, I shall not see the shadows, I shall not feel the rain, I shall not hear the nightingale sing on as if in pain. Now, in this particular verse, girls, the reality of death is dawning upon the poetess or the narrator, unnamed narrator. And what she's trying to tell us is that, doing all those things like coming to the grave and planting cypress trees, etc., is of no use actually, because at the end of the day, once you're gone, once you've died, nothing really makes much of a difference. It's an end of a life. So you can't notice shadows, you can't feel the rain on your face or your body, and you can't hear the nightingale sing, whether it is in pain, whether it is in happiness, nothing of that sort, because once you're gone, all your senses cease to function. Hence, the poetess does not want anybody to go through any kind of effort in trying to plant trees and put flowers on her grave, and dreaming through the twilight that doth not rise nor set, happily I may remember and happily may forget. And he's saying that, I will be like a person who is dreaming in twilight. Now, twilight is the time between day and night when there is a little bit of light. So he's saying that I'd be dreaming through that twilight, and I would neither rise nor set, and the twilight will be constant. My state of lying in the grave will be constant. And whether you remember me, even then I would be content with the idea. And if you forget me, even then I will be content with the idea. Basically, the poetess is trying to say that death is ambiguous. It is the end of almost everything. So once you're gone, once you're dead, even if your loved ones remember you or they do not remember you, it does not really matter to the dead at all, because once they're gone, their senses cease to function and they're unable to sort of feel what other people are doing for them. So then again, in the second verse slides I've discussed before, the focus is on the sense of sorrow, because um, nothing, no shadows, no rain, no songs from the nightingale will really make much of a difference to somebody who is dead and gone. And of course, the whole ambiguous idea of this particular poem is constituted in the second stanza more than the first stanza, because uh, irrespective of what anybody does, the poetess feels that it is not much of a gain, because such is the reality of that, such is the finality of that, that nothing really matters once you're dead and gone. You can read through this for a detailed idea about what exactly is happening in the second verse. Then again, like in the first verse, even in the second verse, there is the idea of repetition, and it is used to great effect, influencing what the speaker shall not know of without really understanding what they shall be. Now, the unfathomable nature of death, that means something that cannot be understood, something that is beyond understanding. Um, to the living is another very strong theme that you find in the poem, because once you're living, you can never really comprehend the true reality of death, and that is the predominant theme that you find in the poem. Thank you so much, girls, and I hope you understand.